Good evening. It is actually another match for the Inter-University Law Debate Tournament. 8th of finals, round of 16 for two teams who qualify from their group. So they're starting now the final phase of this competition, which will lead to the finals. So congratulations and welcome to the University of Maryland, the University of West Indies. I give the floor to my colleague who will be hosting the match.
Thank you, Professor Lavange. Indeed, welcome everyone to another 8th final match that is happening this week. The one afterwards will be happening in the upcoming days as well. So welcome to a good early afternoon to University of Maryland joining us from Baltimore and University of West Indies joining us from their Port of Spain campus. So today's debate will be on topic whether or not climate-induced displacement should be recognized as grounds for refugee status under international law. As always, we'll do the randomizer for the allocation of positions, but perhaps just a short rewind of who are the participants for the teams that made it to this round, starting with University of Maryland, Mr. Hale.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me? Happy to be here.
Thank you. For University of West Indies, Ms. Wilkinson.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here, and I hope we have a fruitful match today.
You're welcome. For University of Maryland, Ms. Liang.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to meet everyone. I also hope we have a fruitful match today.
You're welcome. For University of West Indies, Ms. Jabbar.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vishala Jabbar. I am so happy to be here, and I wish everyone the best with today's match.
Thank you. Welcome. For University of Maryland, Mr. Gaber.
Hi, everyone. Wishing everyone a great match. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Welcome. And for University of West Indies, Ms. Murray.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to do this match today, and I wish everyone the best of luck.
Thank you. And welcome. We would also like to send our warm regards to the mentors and the coaches of the two teams. Of course, one of the mentors is already on the call. That is Ms. Liana Fenlip for the University of Maryland's team.
Hi, very excited to be here.
Thank you. Welcome. University of Maryland is also supported by Professor Peter Danchin, and University of the West Indies is supported by Dr. Timothy Afonso and Ms. Shivanjali Ramutal. All right. Oh, yes.
Hello. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to see you and have you with us as well. All right, I pass the floor to Professor Lavange. You will shortly see the allocation of positions. Just a short reminder, during the debate, yellow indicates 30 seconds left and red indicates the time being up. All right, best of luck.
Yes, so I'm about to share my screen. So normally you should see a wheel with the double flags and logos of your respective institutions. So there are two chances, one chance to be in favor, one chance to be against the motion, and the team will be in favor, will be starting the match with the first introduction. So now I'm starting the randomizer. So that will be the University of Maryland will be in favor of the motion. As a consequence, it will be the University of the West Indies will be against the motion. Concretely, it means that the University of Maryland will be starting with the first introduction, defending the position that climate-induced displacement should be recognized as grounds for refugee status under international law, while the University of the West Indies will be defending the position that climate-induced displacement should not be recognized as grounds for refugee status under international law. So now you'll have 5 minutes to review our notes, and then we'll hear the introduction by the University of Maryland. Yes, we are done with the 5 minutes preparation.
Yes. Thank you. We'll be starting by hearing the opening statements by the University of Maryland. You will now have 4 minutes.
In 2013, Ioane THIULDT fled the Pacific island nation of Kiribati. Rising sea levels had rendered clean water scarce, destroyed crops, and left his homeland nearly uninhabitable. Seeking asylum in New Zealand, he argued that climate change had put his life at risk. His case, THIULDT v. New Zealand, ultimately failed, but in a landmark 2020 opinion, the UN Human Rights Committee recognized for the first time that countries might violate international law if they return individuals to places where climate change poses a threat to their life, to the right to life. This case is not an outlier, it is a preview. Experts estimate that climate change could displace at least 1.2 billion people by 2050. Entire nations in the Pacific face submersion. In Bangladesh, 17% of the country is expected to vanish underwater, displacing 20 million people. Yet none of these people would qualify as refugees under current international law. That is why we affirm the resolution. Climate-induced displacement should be recognized as grounds for refugee status under international law. The 1951 Refugee Convention, as amended by the 1967 Protocol, defines a refugee as someone with a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group, who is outside their country and unable or unwilling to return. The term climate refugee refers to individuals forcibly displaced across borders due to climate-related events, such as sudden disasters like hurricanes or slow onset changes like rising sea levels or desertification. Our first argument is that there is already a legal foundation in international law to treat climate-displaced persons as refugees, but the current interpretation falls short. While the 1951 Convention focuses on persecution, that term is not limited to direct violence by a state. The Supreme Court of Canada, in Canada v. Ward, held that persecution includes situations where the state is unable to protect its citizens. Climate change fits that bill, especially when governments are either too weak or unwilling to aid communities at risk. In fact, regional treaties already recognize broader definitions. The 1984 Cartagena Declaration covers those fleeing other circumstances seriously disturbing public order and has been adopted by many Latin American states. The 1969 OAU Convention in Africa includes similar language and has been upheld in courts, like in cases like the Ruta v. Minister of Home Affairs case. These precedents show that expanding refugee definitions to include climate-induced displacement is not unprecedented, it's overdue. Additionally, legal guidance from the UNHCR in 2020 affirms the idea that the existing refugee framework can encompass climate-related claims when climate change intersects with violence, discrimination, or the inability of a state to provide basic protections. Our second argument is that climate displacement is a growing humanitarian crisis, and international law must evolve to meet it. The numbers are staggering. Between 2008 and 2020, climate disasters displaced over 318 million people. There is no international legal framework providing them with rights to protection, resettlement, or asylum. And without legal recognition, climate refugees face a legal void since they can't access the protections guaranteed to them through traditional refugees. As Caitlin Sussman noted in the Georgetown Journal of International Affairs, the global legal system is dangerously reactive, waiting for this crisis to explode rather than preparing for it now. Recognizing climate-induced displacement under international refugee law is both a moral imperative and a legal evolution rooted in existing principles. It is not about eroding the 1951 Convention, it's about applying its humanitarian spirit to one of the greatest challenges of our century. Because if not now, when? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear the opening statement by the University of the West Indies for the against position. You have 4 minutes. Okay, a little technical difficulty. We'll wait for the team to reconnect.
back.
All right, University of West Indies, can you hear me?
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are. You now have 4 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Honorable judges, they have addressed that climate displacement is an issue. However, that is not what is up for contention today. We are simply stating that the Refugee Convention should not include climate displacement for reasons such as the incompatibility with the legal definition of a refugee, protection of state sovereignty, and the impact it has economically on states. To begin with, the opposition has stated persecution under the Refugee Convention. However, they have failed to establish that persecution, according to the Oxford Dictionary, states that it is the ill treatment and hostility of a person based on sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, and political interest. The reality is, the environment does not have the mens rea to meet that threshold to fall within the definition of persecution. On top of that, by modifying the convention, we have to change the entire convention, not just the definition, which would fall under Article 39 of the Vienna Convention, which means that states need to unilaterally agree to change such a thing. Now, let's be honest, Trinidad and Tobago hasn't even incorporated the Refugee Convention. So, how practical is this? Because all we're doing is broadening the scope and making it difficult to actually have.
My apologies for interruption. Your audio cut off. Apologies for interruption. Your audio cut off. And making it harder
with such a convention. On top of that, specifically outlines that states are sovereign and equal, and the UN Charter has no.
All right, I would like to ask all the participants to close their cameras so we make it easier for the bandwidth. University of West Indies, your time has been paused at 2 minutes 15 seconds. You have been cut off at sentence at making it harder for. So feel free, please, to continue from there. You have 2 minutes and 15 seconds left.
Excuse, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are. I'll be also closing my camera, so you will see me resurface at 30 seconds left.
Okay. So yeah, making it harder for other states to join. Furthermore, Article 2 of the UN Convention specifically outlined that states are sovereign and equal, and that under the UN Charter, states are sovereign and equal, and that the UN has no business in meddling with domestic affairs of states. By broadening the scope, you're making it harder for states to agree to such terminologies and making conformity even more difficult. This is also supported in the THIULDT case, where an asylum claim was brought on the rise of sea levels and environmental degradation. However, this was rejected by the New Zealand courts and the UN Human Rights Committee. This also reaffirmed the sovereignty of New Zealand because they themselves have the right to choose when and where to allow for an asylum person. On top of that, Turkey has 2.7 million Syrians. Under the World Bank, this has led to housing shortages, unemployment, increase in rental prices, increase in food shortages. They cannot sustain their economy because of refugees. By enhancing the convention, we're enhancing greater chances for people to get refugee statuses, basically saying that we're rejecting the sustainable development of countries. This is unacceptable. Also, the opposition has mentioned Pacific Islands, but look at Tuvalu. They have literally went with Australia under the Pavolli Union, in which if their island goes underwater, they can migrate to the Australia. On top of that, CARICOM, free movement under Article 45 of the Treaty of Chaguaramas. They can move between Caribbean countries if anything happens to their countries because of climate disaster. As a result of this, why must we now burden ourselves with changing the convention? This is unacceptable and unnecessary. We shouldn't blur the lines between legal obligations and humanitarian need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes the opening statements. We'll now be hearing the rebuttals. Starting with the first rebuttal, University of Maryland, you have 2 minutes.
Judge, the language in the resolution that is climate-induced displacement should be recognized. We need not prove on-site proposition that the world will agree on the definition, only that they ought to, that they should to. So let's talk about the principle in which refugee status was born, and specifically the language of prosecution being a requirement back in the 30s. So why, after World War II, the international community signed on to the 1951 Refugee Convention because when people are persecuted by the very states that promise them inalienable rights, it becomes impossible for them to remain. The legitimacy of refugee status is not about the nature of the harm. It's about the impossibility for an individual to remain in their home country, in the place that they have known their whole lives. Under international law, nation states are responsible for protecting the fundamental rights of their citizens, including right to life, property, etc., that my opposition has mentioned. So, in a list, my colleague, Mr. Deaver, tells you that the legal categorization of refugees has expanded over time as new existential harms have developed. He cited several things, including the Cartagena Declaration, which was adopted in Latin America, and so forth. Climate disaster displacement is no different, because the principle of refugee status is that it becomes impossible to remain. 30 years ago, A versus Minister for Immigration and Ethnic Affairs, the Australia High Court rejected asylum for an applicant, unequivocally stating that no matter how devastating may be the epidemic, natural disaster, or famine, it is not refugee status because there is no role of human agents in that uncontrollable force of nature. However, we see in the status quo that states are unable to protect the rights of their citizens because they are sinking into the ocean, because they are unwilling to take political action in order to protect them. They say that the principal basis for the existence of refugee status is not just generalized harm. We agree. It is instead state failure. And Judge, we live in a world where on matters of climate disaster, the state has failed. It is impossible.
Thank you. We'll now be hearing the first rebuttal by the University of the West Indies for the against position. You have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
What my opponents fail to address is that the Pacific Islands are self-sufficient in combating climate change. According to Article 2 of the UN Charter, it affirms that states are sovereign and equal. Therefore, the UN cannot intervene in matters in their domestic jurisdiction. And expecting states to accept climate-displaced migrants infringes not only on the sovereign right, but it infringes on their control of immigration in their country. For example, in the THIULDT case, as my colleague mentioned, both the UN and the UNHCR rejected this on the basis that the definition of a refugee does not cover these persons. And the court held that climate change does not meet the threshold of persecution, nor does it establish an individualized threat that would warrant a refugee status. Therefore, we affirm that expanding this definition would dilute its legal clarity and overburden an already strained asylum system. And therefore, we are suggesting that climate-displaced persons should be addressed through a separate and tailored framework without interfering with that of the Refugee Convention. And taking into account Article 31 to 33 of that convention, it gives refugees special considerations and it prohibits their removal from a country. And therefore, this is why Canada, they were so reluctant to accede in the convention because it was not in their domestic laws. And this was acknowledged in the Canadian Yearbook for International Law. And my opposition wants states to support people even when countries like Sweden and Turkey, they are already drowning in the influx of refugees. And this would be a disservice done and a breach of their sovereignty. And if states were persecuted for prioritizing their own nationals and overburdening themselves with refugees, this is unacceptable and against their sovereign right, as it was affirmed in the case of THIULDT. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now be hearing the second rebuttal by the University of Maryland. You have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
Judges, to reiterate, today's debate is a question of should, not would. We are debating should the international community choose to accept climate refugees. The opposition in today's debate says that this will dilute the legal definition, but they have wholly ignored the myriad legal authorities that we have cited to pointing to the fact that the international community is already moving in the direction of accepting climate refugees. That was Kennedy v. Ward. That was the 1984 Cartagena Convention and the OAU Agreement in Africa, all recognizing that persecution can manifest in the form of natural disaster, disaster discrimination, and relief, and a whole host of other ways related to the environment. In fact, as international law attorney Caitlin Sussman wrote for the Chicago Journal of International Law in 2023, the THIULDT case was seen as a victory because even though it was a loss on the facts, the court for the first time recognized that nations have a non-refoulement obligation to one another when it comes to forcing people to return to countries at environmental risk. Fundamentally, judges, there is no risk of diluting the legal agreement. There already is a legal basis. We see this in 2018, where the United Nations General Assembly passed the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, where they recognized the obligation of states to accept climate refugees. The opposition talks about how this would violate sovereignty, how it would lead to economic harms. But judges, these states have already signed on to these international agreements. They've already agreed to take part. And fundamentally, what's a greater risk to the economy of these countries? Is it taking on an additional influx of refugees, or is it going to be allowing the horrible effects of climate change to fester and make worse? We recognize that some countries are at capacity. That's why we argue that climate refugees should be recognized, and states that have capacity should start sharing in that burden and taking in more refugees.
Thank you. We'll now hear the second rebuttal by the University of West Indies. You have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
Okay. Thank you, my opponents, for raising the point that there is precedent supporting it. But even if there's precedent supporting the motion, all states have not yet ratified it into their domestic law. And although we can agree with it, it still has yet to be ratified. And even when they mentioned that we have ignored also the precedent in agreement with the motion, the precedents and agreements with it, the opposing team has ignored the economic impacts of redefining what a refugee is. We understand the gravity and of course we empathize, but the economic risks are great and they deserve to be discussed and considered. Refugee and citizens have the same rights according to Sweden's Aliens Act, Chapter 5, Section 1. And this means that they enjoy the same social advantages. They also benefit from the resources of that country. So if the country is continuously putting out resources for refugees, that means that they will face great economic strain. And my colleagues rightfully mentioned Turkey and Sweden. Sweden was a great fortitude for refugees, and it was also a beacon of hope. But now they are closing their borders. They are drastically limiting their refugee status and everything that they have afforded refugees because it has burdened them, because it has depleted their economic resources. So if we say that we are to support this motion, what about these smaller countries like Trinidad and Tobago that are not economically equipped? And when we think about sending refugees to places, we deal with proximity. We do not deal with the countries that have the better resources. So if you impose these obligations upon smaller countries, their economies will not be able to handle it because each country deals with their own fair share of issues like inflation, debt, fragile institutions, things like that. And this is specifically why the 1951 Convention limits the scope of refugee status, because it would overextend the system and destabilize it. So who is international law for, we must ask? It is not only for the refugees, but for the states, and their rights and opinions deserve to be protected. Thank you.
Thank you. We have now heard the rebuttals. We'll proceed with closing statements. Starting with the University of Maryland's debate team, you have 2 minutes.
In today's debate, we have shown you not only why the international community should accept climate refugees, we have shown you that international law is already moving in that direction. Now, in their last speech, the opposition has truly collapsed to one last argument. They say that the economic costs of accepting more refugees will simply be too high. We have had a few responses. For one, the economic costs of climate change, I'm not doing anything about the necessity of mass migration, will be far greater than any economic costs that come with hosting refugees. Beyond the fact that those refugees themselves, if we follow proper protocol, instead of allowing refugees to have to flee through migratory laws or without any kind of legal protection, it allows these refugees to assimilate into host countries and become productive members of those new societies, contributing to the economies. Additionally, we say that incorporating climate refugees will ensure that states that aren't carrying that burden currently can start to lift the load and ensure that smaller nations are not left with the burden. But fundamentally, judges, the problem is so much bigger. As we talked about at the beginning of this debate, billions of people are at risk today from climate displacement. We are already in the midst of the climate refugee crisis. Sure, there will be costs. Sure, there will be burdens. But the devastation that is being wrought by climate disaster, by the fact that some people won't even have homes to return to that are wiped out by rising sea levels or other natural disasters, means we have no other choice. These people have to go somewhere. Should we abandon them without any kind of legal protection, or should the international system create a set of legal instruments to ensure these people have protections to deal with the hard battles of ensuring they can be protected? We think the world will be better if they are afforded that protection instead of being left behind, even if it won't be easy.
Thank you. We'll now hear the concluding statement for the University of the West Indies. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And while I understand my colleague's proposal that, it's easy for the economic, that the economic impact would not be that much. It is easy for developed states within the international community to say that, but for the developing ones, it's not that easy. And it's very impactful because we do acknowledge the suffering caused by climate-induced displacement. We do, because it is real. And it does deserve international attention, but refugee status should not be redirected. Redefining refugee status distorts the meaning and undermines the key structure of international refugee law. And we have demonstrated 3 points why. If we look at the legal definition, the climate does not possess intent, so therefore it cannot persecute a refugee. Secondly, we must also recognize state sovereignty. It is up to the domestic courts to make asylum and immigration decisions. International law should not disrespect that boundary. And in the THIULDT case, it also affirmed climate change does not meet the threshold yet. While it could meet it, it does not meet the threshold yet. And the economic strain cannot be overlooked because, again, we mentioned Sweden and Turkey. And if large and generous states could face this much impact from the economic aspect of it, then how much more will a smaller and developing state feel like? How much more would they feel? How much more would they suffer? We are not denying the humanitarian urgency of it all. We are simply saying that the solution lies elsewhere, in targeted frameworks, in regional compacts, and even in climate resilience initiatives. And James Arthur once said, justice without wisdom is impossible. So we need to ensure our compassion is guided by prudence. And we also need to respect the other states and their needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, you can all now relax. You're no longer graded after this part. This concludes your 8th final match in the second stage of the Hague Inter-University Law Debate Tournament. Congratulations on completing your match. So always, as soon as we have confirmed the scorecards from the 3 judges for the debate, we'll be sharing them with you, and the team that receives the highest score will be also in contact with you in regards to the arrangement for the quarterfinals match. So we can then proceed with the scheduling, also with the other team that will be your opponent for the upcoming round. But already we now have a possibility for a short feedback. So I will first pass the floor to the students and then, of course, to your coaches as well to maybe share some encouraging words, as it has been quite a journey of the 8th final to get to the 8th finals. So starting with the University of Maryland, perhaps Mr. Gever, how was the match and the experience?
Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
I'm gonna steal that from now on. That was great. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, today. It was really fun time participating in this debate, and you guys did a really great job. Yeah, I mean, the con argument we thought was definitely tough, but you guys made excellent points. You spoke really clearly and well. It was all around just a great debate, so thank you.
Very much for sharing. For the University of West Indies, Ms. Wilkinson, how was the match?
I think the match was really good and really informative. Like, I really love seeing how it plays out in real life. So I really loved the kind of combative nature of it all, that everybody was able to think on their feet and like kind of shut down certain arguments, combat it, things like that. So that was really good.
Thank you for sharing. University of Maryland, Mr. Hale, how was the match and the experience?
Yeah, I think this was one of the toughest to prepare for, not just because we're in the, midst of exams here, but I think it's a tricky topic. And there is a lot of legal precedent, but I find that it often operated in gray areas. I think we found that a lot of the research between the pro and the con really overlapped, and really the difference in preparation was interpretation and how we framed the arguments. So I thought it was a really interesting debate, and I thought my opponents did a terrific job here. There was a lot of clash, very combative. I loved it. Great time.
Nice, thank you for the feedback. The University of West Indies, Ms. Jabbar.
Hi. So I really enjoyed listening to this debate today. I thought everyone did a really, really good job. It was also difficult for us during this time because we also had exams Monday and Wednesday, and then we had to prep for this today. So it was quite difficult. But you guys did an amazing job. Some of the arguments was stuff that we also got in our research. So I guess that we were along the same line. So it was really great. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Liang for University of Maryland.
Yeah, I think everyone did such a great job. I guess mirroring like what everyone said, like exams terrible. We had Monday, Wednesday, now we also have tomorrow, and then Monday and Tuesday maybe, depending on our schedules. But like, I think that preparing this was really, really interesting because I feel like the stakes of this topic are actually very, very high. They're like super relevant today. Like I think about how like I'm from California, and like I think about the wildfires all the time, and it's like okay, yeah, like so I thought this was a really great topic to sort of like kind of I guess of course. I mean, I feel like that already, like to kind of like come to an actual think about what is possible in the world that we live in today.
All right, well, thank you for sharing. For University of West Indies, Ms. Murray, how was the match?
I think it was a really nice match. I liked all the combative nature of it, and I very much enjoyed the topic because I feel like in today's society, this is a very pressing problem that needs to be addressed, and allowing this topic to be represented in the Hague debate, it's like very evolutionary because it kind of shows that, hey, this is an issue that needs to be addressed. And then they heard our side, we heard some of their side, we learned different countries, and it was a very informative. And I hope like people that listen to the debate can realize how much of an issue this is that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing. And if I can maybe also ask for the two mentors that are with us on the call, perhaps starting with Ms. Fendi, how was the experience of with your team, maybe all the way to the 8th finals, or perhaps particularly this match?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been hectic. As I'm sure all of the participants can agree, it's hard to do this when you're also dealing with the normal responsibilities of, law school, university. This particular match was short notice, but a fun sprint as opposed to, a slightly longer marathon, which made it really interesting in terms of, I definitely agree of the research. The scope was we ended up with very similar research, I think, for both topics. It's kind of the same universe of sources that we're pulling from. So it was a little bit different from previous matches where we were really working more on interpretation. And a lot of the research was done very late at night. So which I think helps with getting creative a little bit with how you're interpreting it. So it's very nice. I love seeing how the other team interpreted the same sources that we'd seen. And again, excellent job all around.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And Ms. Rambutar, how was the experience, the match?
It was indeed very interesting. For me in particular, because this is my first time coaching the Hague debaters at our university, and what I noticed with this particular debate is I could have seen the growth and the development of the students from the very first debate to this debate. And the other team, the opposing team, did a phenomenal job as well. You all did an excellent job at keeping them on their toes, and it showed how much work you've put into this. So congratulations, and may the best team win. But whoever wins, you all did well, notwithstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And of course, just the final part, as always, we encourage you to stay in contact. Unfortunately, due to some scheduling conflicts, it was not possible to hold the networking event before the 8th final, so it will be happening after. Also with a surprise that we are organizing this year for the first time, and that is the workshop for that might help you with your careers after you complete your degrees with LinkedIn, with CV, motivation letter, all that includes in pursuing the legal career further, perhaps even the international sphere. But already now there is a possibility to do some exchanges between your teams. So I would pose you 2 questions. You can either answer as a whole as a team, or one of your team members can answer. First one is, what are the activities that are available to you, or the opportunities that are available to you throughout the school year, social, academic, by your faculty, or perhaps student associations? Starting with the University of the West Indies, if perhaps you could take the floor.
So, well, for us, we have a law society executive who puts on a lot of different activities. So we'll have like picnics for camaraderie purposes, movie nights. We do things like different exchange students. So we did a tour with the University of the West Indies from Mona campus. And yeah, so we have a lot of different activities like that. We do a lot of networking activities within our region. Then we have the human rights clinics. So people can do different topics, any international scale, and then we make a conference of it. And we also have different moots and competitions too. So we also have Jessup and a CCJ moot, which is a regional competition in the Caribbean. So yeah, we have a lot of activities, and it really helps with both networking, getting to see where else you can go, and it also helps with advocacy, because sometimes you don't get that practical skill and experience during just simply going into an exam, writing down your answer, and leaving. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you for sharing. How about for University of Maryland? What are the opportunities or the activities you might have during the year?
Yeah, we have a ton at the law school. We have a lot of clubs and societies for different areas of law. We are all members of the International Law Society, but there's a ton, bankruptcy, food law, entertainment law, constitutional, criminal, tons of different law societies. We also have affinity groups, so based on people's identity groups, we have law student societies for those as well. We have a number of social events that are always put on throughout the semesters. It's trivia nights. We do this thing called bar review, where we all just go to a bar. And that's always fun. We have something called Barrister's Ball, also lovingly called Law Prom, where we all dress up very nice at the end of the year, and it's a very fun little night. We also do Jessup here at our school. It's fun. It's a fun time. I'm on it. Yeah, I think there's a lot. We have like clinics and opportunities for advocacy through, we have like mediation teams, alternative dispute resolution teams, a variety of different moot court teams, a lot of writing opportunities if people want them.
Right. Perhaps there is a possibility to stay in contact as well in regards to exchanges on which social activities or which academic activities work best, and compare notes. I think, if I remember correctly, the University of West Indies, you have 3 campuses, right? In Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago. So you might have also quite a story to share in regards to engaging the students across the campuses, which could be also fun for University of Maryland if you might be able to do some exchanges, maybe. All right. Well, speaking about exchanges and maybe also some anticipations that might come in regards to that, what are the stereotypes that you have heard or experienced yourselves in regards to the city where you're currently living in? And perhaps are they true or are they completely incorrect? And this time we would start perhaps with the University of Maryland.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's sorry. No, it's an interesting question. This is my first time spending time in the city of Baltimore, and I think maybe I went here to the aquarium as a child, but I really didn't have a lot of experience with the city. And I would definitely say that the stereotype is pretty negative in general. Like there's the stereotypes that there's a lot of crime and a lot of drug use, and that it's a dangerous city. But we have a beautiful law school. There's definitely parts of the city that are a little scary, but I think there are parts of every city that are scary. And there are definitely some really nice parts of Baltimore too. So it's been fun to sort of come here for the first time and build a home for myself in someplace new and kind of dismantle all those stereotypes.
Right. Perhaps maybe also, personally, I'm curious. So do you maybe have a culinary stereotype as well? Maybe that's like the go-to food if you go for visits or anything.
So this one is actually quite positive. Baltimore is known for having the best crab in the U.S., and it definitely does. So if you ever come to Baltimore, I definitely recommend get some crabs, get some crab cakes, anything crab. It's going to be good here.
Great. Oh, thank you. For University of West Indies, do you maybe get inspired and already have a culinary stereotype to share, or do you have a different one that you have encountered?
Okay, so Trinidad and Tobago is a very diverse culture. So we have Indians, we have Africans, we have a very diverse culture. So one of the things that is really popular is doubles. So it's a street food. It's basically like two little rotis with curried chana. And it's something that is very popular. So if you're ever in Trinidad, that is something that you definitely need to try. And bacon shack. That is also very famous, and you can get that by the Maracas Bay, which is a very popular beach in Trinidad. Yeah. Also, another stereotype that people say, so Trinidad is really small, and we are also a twin island. So there's Trinidad and there's Tobago, but it's very different because Trinidad is more fast-paced, whereas Tobago is where Trinidadians go to relax. So they have the nicer beaches, they have the white sand, they have, there's a place called, no man's land and Nyland Pool. It's literally a pool in the middle of the ocean. There's no show or anything. So if you're coming, you definitely need to check that out. Yeah. I don't know what's going on.
Right. I think I saw an idea for the University of Maryland already to look up maybe some plane tickets to see.
Additional question: do you play still drums music?
Dance music.
That's our national instrument. Yeah. But right now, none of us play it.
I used to
But
play
we have like
Shows.
we have like panorama and stuff where we can go and listen to it around carnival time because it's a very big like competition where it's like a weekend of just listening to pan for the whole weekend, and then we decide the best pan team.
And it's very serious. Like, it's actually very serious. A lot of people tune into it. So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, that's it all from our side. Once again, congratulations on completing your 8th final match. We really do encourage you to stay in contact afterwards, and also you'll have the opportunity to interact during the upcoming event. And of course, happy to share the news with the results with you as well. And in a short while, you will also be receiving the certificates as we progress through each round. So you'll be receiving the participation certificates. If you need them earlier, case, for example, for the applications for next programs or perhaps applying to internships or next positions, don't hesitate to reach out as well, and we'll get that sorted. All right, well, I pass the floor to Professor Levanche to close us off, and thank you again.
Yes, so congratulations. That was your match for the 8th of finals. Of course, we will provide a ranking again for the competition during the next days, and this will add for your university to the ranking in the World League of Debate in the Hague format. The University of West Indies has been already participating to the competition, so the university will be, of course, moving into the ranking, but for the University of Maryland, it will be your first entrance this year in this league, and of course, you are the pioneers, and it means, yes, future students will have to help the ranking to go up as well, but yes, congratulations, and yes, all your results will be reflected at the end of this competition, and when we update the ranking in the list of all the universities. So many thanks again, and we keep in touch. You will receive some emails during the next days with the results, and as well the information about this session, networking, and as well CV career workshop concerning jobs and interview and applications, let's say, in international law. Many thanks. Wish you the best for your exams, and wish you the best as well for the results of the exam. We keep in touch. Bye bye.